But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. We choose to go to the moon.
All right, everyone, welcome to the 164th episode of the World Blockchain Roundtable. Our hosts for today are I'm for I'm, Greg from Rivet. We don't know if Sean's going to show up. If he does, he'll pop in here, and you already know who he is. Lisa from the Mighty Lair. Let's see here. Nicolo Filippo Veneri Savoia, founder, CEO of Look Lateral Group, and Dex, an asset and security token exchange out of Switzerland. I'm Joe, founder and architect of Dragon Chain. And also, we might, I think Aaron Day accepted this, so he might pop in too. We'll see if he shows up, then we'll just add him in. And John is still missing in the tunnels of New York, so hopefully we'll see him one day in the future. Who knows? So first, quick update on the World Blockchain Roundtable Layer ownership tokens, the distribution. So this is the first, and as I believe it, the only podcast that is also a DAO. So anyone participating gets a piece of the DAO, which includes governance and everything else. Every host from last week will receive 133 lot. Every topic contributor, 166 lot. Last week's themes were nominated by I'm, who's batting like probably in the 900s, who will receive 166 lot. So the NFTs come with perpetual passive income, free edits, governance votes. Theme of the week this week is, well, you know what? Let me show you last week real quick. How blockchain is solving real world problems. Okay, this week is, let me see, click here. Brainstorm session. And I think brainstorm session is important to note because I actually want to make sure that we are brainstorming as much as possible. How to tokenize assets with and without ownership. And without ownership, I haven't had a lot of time to think about it, but I want to know what that means. And this was nominated by I'm, correct? Yes.
That's correct.
So 91,000 energy too. So, I mean, I like it. I'm going to discussion theme. It's not an announcement, I don't think. Anyway, I guess I'll go ahead and refresh this after that energy applies. And now we have the question. Are you guys ready to go to the questions, or do we need to start with anything?
I'm ready. I'm excited about this topic. Obviously, I wrote it. This is more of a maybe you folks can educate me on this one.
Right. Who knows? All right. So let's see here. First, a question by Dayrux. Man, somebody getting above you. I am from him. William, you're Dayrux. Question: how can you be sure that an asset is backed by something that has value in the real world? So if we're talking about tokenization. So let's see here. If you're okay, I'll go up the line so that Nicolo doesn't have the. I didn't realize the order was like that, and since he's not been on before, that way he'd get a little feel for it without being pressure of the first answer. So I'm.
Well,
how can you be sure?
This is a good one. I haven't thought this one through at all either. But obviously, tying a real world asset to a token. I think ownership has to be in place. Otherwise, it could get kind of bastardized and duplicated. But, things like, let's say a carve-in, a car has a serial number or a VIN, and there's only one vehicle with that VIN number, correct? So if you were to tokenize one vehicle and have multiple owners that were tied to that one VIN, that would be an example of how an asset could be backed, the asset being the token, could be backed by the value of the vehicle. That's just one kind of shooting from the hip concept or idea that I had to answer this question. I hadn't even thought it through prior to the show. So I know there's more to it than that, but I'll punt the ball to the next person.
Right on. Lisa.
So I read this question a little bit differently. I thought it was saying, how do you make sure that the asset is backed by something? And I think that's where, I know, do not cringe everyone at once, but a little centralization has to be in some part of the play, whether that's validation through peers or even something as simple as we were sending a letter the other day and there's a port issue. And so to make sure, to verify, we had to do it certified mail so that there's some kind of receipt or third party. Even when they grade baseball cards, like, how do I know that that's really a good, real baseball card and not a fake? Well, you have it verified. And that's where I think there has to be some kind of verification, either through consensus of peer group or a expert, to make sure that it has real world value.
Yep. Greg.
Okay, so I would start by first putting a caveat here. We got to challenge the notion of value as something that can be intrinsic, right? Because value is ultimately a subjective phenomenon that's very individual, right? Something that I find valuable in the real world, somebody else might find less valuable. You're going to be really happy to trade a beautiful, perfect, flawless diamond that's the biggest that you've ever seen for a bottle of water if you're in the middle of the Sahara Desert and you don't have any, right? Value is dependent on the subject. Now, that said, if you want to actually do this, you're going to need some kind of real world nexus where the minting takes place in conjunction with the asset, right? This could be done by a centralized organization. This could be done by a decentralized organization. But for example, let's say you want to tokenize birth certificates as NFTs. When the doctor signs the birth certificate in the hospital, that's when the tokenization needs to happen. So you have this point of connection to the real world that is, not just the creation of this asset by some individual by themselves, but by some kind of signing ceremony, similar to the way we transfer deeds. And that would be my sort of loose answer, but the broader answers are more interesting because it depends on what you're trying to connect it to, right? Proof of reserves in stable coins is actually a really good example of this in practice with one example, right? Because you can see based on their provision of cryptographic proofs that they have the reserves. Another example would be livestock, and you might take a moment to do some kind of genetic analysis and include a string of DNA in the token as you create it, so that it's connected to that. Something uniquely identifiable and applied by someone who is not just the creator of the asset, right? And that would be my answer.
That's very good. Okay, Nicolo, what do you think about this? And how have you guys done it on Dex, I guess?
Yeah, I basically agree with what they said. In addition, I can say that we tokenized for the first time at Rolls-Royce, and the VIN number is absolutely a very useful tool in order to identify the right asset. And the same approach in artworks, we could have the certificate of authentication of the official archive. So it's important to identify the asset, and so it's important to have a centralized way to do that, because some people have to do a due diligence. there is always something that must be checked. So it's important to understand who is the owner, first of all, because let's start from who is issuing the token. So there is a due diligence on the owner, and then a due diligence on the asset. And so this is, of course, helpful in order to ensure stability and certainty to the investors that will buy a portion of that asset. So I agree with basically all of them, and I can say that in our platform we have a similar process. So we tokenized a Lucio Fontana artwork, we tokenized a Rolls Royce, we tokenized a racehorse, and the process was always the same. Due diligence on the issuer, due diligence on the asset. We check all the documents, the official documents. And then there is also an independent appraiser that will say that the price of tokenization, or better to say, the tokenization value is in line with the market price. We cannot say that is the exact price because we cannot be expert of anything, but we have an independent appraiser that will say the price is in range, in market range. That are the necessary steps in order to allow people to invest, to purchase asset tokens. That's my
so what you're saying is that if it's been done properly, then you can tell based on the value of the asset in the virtual space, tracking to the value of the asset in the real world.
Yes, of course. There must be.
Makes sense.
There must be an agreement in which it's clear who is in charge of custody, for example, of that asset. Because if there is a private collector and I don't know nothing about him, and I cannot be sure that he will keep the custody of the artwork in the proper way, and he will not sell the artwork to another person, and he will basically steal the money from the other people. So in a case of a museum, of an important gallery, of course they have the reputation and also the anti-fire system in order to keep the custody of the artwork. If it's a private collector, then we need to find a player that will take care about the custody, a bank or a gallery or a partner that has the requirements to do that.
Could it also be handled in one of two other ways, where the value of it is discounted based on the reliability of the custodian?
It's a nice concept. It's a nice concept, but I have to say something immediately, that why we are doing that, why we are tokenizing art or Rolls Royce or racehorse, in order to bring new kind of investors in this type of asset. And so at least at the beginning of this long process, we must be 100% sure about that. And so if I want to bring someone in that asset, I want to be sure that the first 10 investments will be a very good and solid experience and investment.
Right, absolutely, and this makes sense in the context of investment assets. I was really more thinking in terms of like something that's not so valuable, where the certainty is less necessary for the use case, like tracking provenance of supply chains on like a commodity that if you lose one, or if one is mistakenly authenticated, like let's say a bunch of bananas, right? Like if you want to tokenize that, the level of veracity you need is a lot lower.
Absolutely, yes.
Cool.
Right. Sean. Hey, sorry, Sean. I think I was
whatever, man.
Off. When you came on, I didn't hear a beep, and nobody told me. I'm just joking. So what do you think? How can you be sure that this
I think let me take all of your answers, because y'all have good points and bad points. Lisa, going with centralization. This communist over here. I love you, Lisa. Good morning. Okay, so this already happened. We have grading companies like the CCG and all that kind of thing, and basically almost everyone. I want to say everyone, but I don't like generalizing. Have been caught in a massive scandal over, the decades. In some kind of way, they cheated because, and collectors know this. And you have to pay a decent amount of money to have anything rated, a car, baseball card, comic, whatever. And if it means like the difference between $1 million and 50,000 in some cases. So if you have an 8 and you know what currently they're looking for, you can rip that open and send it in to be reevaluated, and then get that 9.5, 9.2 for the same thing that was an 8, 2 years ago or 6 months ago. So you can just kind of game the system in that way. And I'll get to the point on it. I think that this question in particular is interesting because when it comes to easily the question was, that wasn't the valuation. That was where Greg threw me off. It was the verification, right? Yeah, be sure. Okay. The bigger it is, kind of the easier it is. Like, it's easy to go check and see, oh, you have 2 tons of gold backings this, or you have, this much oil backing. On larger scales, you need less trust because it's much more obvious to everybody. Whereas on more individualized stuff, the smaller you get, the more you need to trust the reputation or to trust that third party. So I think that's where and I don't know why Greg hasn't brought this up in a while. DAOs or some kind of governing body needs to have the carrot and the stick thing, which works so good for proof of work mining, that the person who does the valuation or who backs that, they have an incentive to be honest. Like they don't get paid, they don't get rewarded, they don't get anything until the DAO or everyone else kind of verifies their verification.
There's and stakes and slashing those stakes is a very effective mechanism.
Yeah, and then that's where that reputation score comes in. The higher score you get, the more reward you would get, the more you would care about your reputation score, because it's kind of like your business and your thing. So you want to make sure and keep it high, so you get a bigger amount of the pool from whatever that DAO puts into verifying the assets.
Yep.
Like Greg said, the smaller it is, the much harder it is to, because I don't give a crap if your bananas are worth, as much as they say they are. It's
they're organic.
Well, I mean, those come into question with like detecting the or verifying the origin of a commodity in international trade, right? Like if you're trying to claim that these are bananas subject to this customs duty versus the one from the this favored nation where they're going to shut them out from the port altogether and send them back home. That kind of thing is far more difficult to do with with a heavy process, because the payoff isn't as big, right?
Ultimately, the market is going to determine the value of the asset. Ultimately, the market is going to determine if the custodian is trustworthy or not. And that's all going to be reflected in the price and price discovery along the way.
So here's an interesting question for you guys.
Wait, let Greg.
I just want to answer the main question.
Yeah, Joe needs to.
Go for it, Joe. You haven't answered yet. I'm sorry.
It's a very basic. That you need evidence, and blockchain can solve some of these things. Like say, Sean's description of I can break open that seal and have it reevaluated and get a better score, and keep doing that until I get the score that's high enough. If it's on chain, then that negates the ability to do that, and it opens up. Oh, okay. And ideally you would be able to get multiple evaluations so that, okay, yeah, that evaluator always gives a low value, and I got an 8.5 with that. But all the rest would be on chain, and so you would get a better consensus. And if you wanted to put the money in for it, to get those evaluators, the evaluators would have a reward involved based upon either direct contract and paying you to do it, or on the consensus itself, that the more accurately they are evaluating it by consensus, the better value they will have. And essentially, that whole thing about provenance that the art world knows about is very applicable, especially even if it's historical documents. You can get them on chain, which is a value to the world because they'll be there forever and tied to that piece of art for history, or that item for history. And it can be, you can do it at any granularity as well, because if you have some item, you can have a snapshot every 30 seconds on chain if you want, so you can see, okay, it's still there, it's still in the climate controlled environment that I know that we need to keep the value, whatever else. And there's another aspect that's kind of abstract about this that is interesting to me. I don't know if anything will ever come of it in the real world, but the difference, and it is I think a graded difference from a real world hard asset. What was that? Somebody has something going on. A real world hard asset like a car or a piece of art or a house or a hotel or something that could be tokenized, versus something that very much is virtual, like an NFT or something that I can't actually hold in my hands. And it's an interesting thing because, theoretically, we think about this, as abstract or maybe pointless as this is, we could essentially tokenize. We could put a contract out there to tokenize a concept, just an abstract concept, and people would buy into it. It's like, I own, 1/1,000,000th of, liberty or something, right? I don't know what it'd be. It's just some abstract concept that you can't actually ever grasp. It's something like a copyright. I mean, why not? Why not? You think about copyrights and patents. Would it not make more difference to essentially roll something out there and let people, instead of licensing the patent from or licensing the copyright or something else, you have to buy ownership of it, and you have utility now in that ownership that you can use this like anybody else. And
right,
it's just
sort of like buying an NFT for commercial licensing rights to a song,
right,
kind of thing.
Right.
Aren't you kind of describing meme coins, though, in a way?
Well, if you're talking about abstract concepts, maybe.
Like an abstract idea, like liberty.
Maybe. Well, that's without the rugging, maybe. I don't know,
Yeah.
right?
So here's an interesting question. How can AI play into this? Because like the thought experiment I was doing is, let's say you've got an app that you want to distribute that tokenizes a specific kind of asset. Let's for the sake of dumb AI examples, let's say you want to tokenize a hot dog, right? So you put your camera on the hot dog. It says, yes, this is a hot dog, and it takes some characteristics of it that will uniquely identify it and creates a token, right? How can AI play into this, such that maybe you could have automation owned or unowned entirely assets?
That already exists in an app that helps people list on eBay and many platforms. That what you're talking about.
Well, so the question that I have is, like, how much trusted computing do you need? How much verification on the algorithm do you need that's doing the vetting? Like, how are these things going to be possible for trivial use, right? Because if we really want to get into some of the unique power of the efficiency of decentralized computing, then we can start talking about, like, okay, the way that stores do inventory loans. Do we want to tokenize the individual toothbrush rather than treat it as a bulk commodity, and that way you can lend against your inventory more precisely? Those sorts of things. I don't know if this is a problem space that anybody else is familiar with, so I might be talking about nonsense to everybody. But
like inventory, just-in-time inventory and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it could be, but would that effectively be useful? I tend to think that with the venture capital behind AI, that I'm not going to say this is an axiom, but everything will tend toward AI application to number go up, or to make
Well,
things
for what it's worth, there would be a lot of value in tokenizing inventory lending, because that's how like low margin businesses keep in stock, right? Like the grocery store that you go to doesn't buy all of the produce, doesn't buy all of the goods in cash from its profits. It's borrowing continually from a bank on the value of its current inventory, right? And being able to tokenize that could really streamline it and give those lower margins a little bit of breathing room. It could literally reduce the cost of food, right? So this is a problem space worth looking at, but the challenges there sort of necessitate some kind of automation.
Because if you have a bushel of grain, are you tokenizing tokenizing the bushel? Are you tokenizing some larger magnet grouping, or are you tokenizing each seed, right? I mean, I don't know. You could tokenize each seed and then know that, oh, this is 1,000 seeds, and it's not going to be exactly accurate.
We need a few more iterations of Moore's law, to put it mildly, before we could get to the seed level. But I don't think it's impossible.
It's like the region, this is seed from, this is coffee from Colombia versus this is coffee from Seattle, which is valued more overall in the market. And then, like I am for answer, the market could change.
What's that? There's a coffee that I don't even remember. Asian.
You're talking about
you do a monkey
cat shit coffee. No, the one where
the cat. That's
roasted in the belly of Jaguar, I think. Right?
It's it's a special type. It's kind of like a cat, but not. It stems from the fact that when I forget exactly the place where this happens. I think it's somewhere in the oceanic islands, like down there, like Malaysia area, right?
Yeah, the Brits would steal all the coffee.
Well, no, I think it was the Dutch would not let the locals drink any of the coffee that they were forcing them to harvest. The Dutch would not drink it if it had been through these cats, and so the locals started drinking it that way, and then managed to turn it into a brand where they could sell this coffee for an insane amount post colonialization. Kind of cool,
crazy internet.
A cool about face on a colonial cruelty. But
cool
we'll go to the next question.
We've all brought up though, especially with Lisa, is kind of more the current one. This was like Joe always talks about the ICO boom and just the ideas that came out of it. I remember it was like probably 7 years ago, that this project came out, and I thought it was wildly batty, but it was so detailed, and they had such a big setup, and the people involved were huge in this industry. It was pawning, and now it evolved into tokenizing things on certain level. That was not even part of the discussion. NFTs weren't. This is way back when, and it was about, like Lisa said, people who had reputations to be experts to verify that's a real Rolex, blah blah blah, and then you could get a loan on it, but you had to lock something else up, and then people could, regular people could do the microloans, and then charge you an interest rate that was higher than a bank but less than a pawn shop kind of thing. Where in the end you could either send the person, your item, or send the item to the expert or whatever to be sold, or you pay back the loan. And it was like crypto pawn or something. But the way it was laid out, it was
cool,
really really cool. But I think that idea kind of gave birth to what Lisa's talking about now. This huge thing like eBay and other people use to know you're buying a real used Louis Vuitton.
And the worst part about crypto, though, is that let's say this is a brilliant idea to revolutionize that entire ecosystem, but it would devolve into getting what's his name from Pawn Stars, and they would rug it. So that's how crypto works now.
Well, that's when
I do miss old Joe sometimes.
custody is an important factor in this, especially with these kind of assets, whether it's the custody of the title or the actual asset. And that has to be part of it, because like in Sean's example, if it's, oh, well, the pawn thing, who's holding the real Rolex that was verified? Because if it's the same guy who has the loan and then he just stops checking in with that token, like then he has no skin in the game to.
Very easy to fake stuff like that, especially, right? So,
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Next question from I Am For I Am. Is it possible to legally collateralize something you don't own and then assign tokens to that asset or commodity? Very interesting question. And if so, doesn't having an asset tokenized even more problematic if it is a privacy token? That's interesting. For example, I don't own the Pacific Ocean or the Brooklyn Bridge, right? Brooklyn Bridge is the cartoon version of this, right? But I'm going to tokenize it. It's like, you want to buy this bridge over here? Yeah, buddy. I need some money. You can look at the bridge. It's right there. You can take ownership of it. I'm going to create a privacy token that represents the Pacific Ocean. I'm not sure this will work because I don't know why this is off. The first failure point is lack of ownership. If I did it, someone else could. Then there would be 2 or more Pacific Ocean tokens. I think there probably are. Let's look it up. I'll bet there already are.
Oh, right.
We haven't
like naming
even
a star, very similar.
Yeah, we haven't even added a market to discover price yet, and it has failed based on scarcity and ownership control. Tell me where I'm wrong. Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm going to start this time because that way I can just get I won't be like struggling trying to remember what I wanted to say.
Go for it.
If it were built into the chain, so let's say Ethereum were well designed, right? It's just a different world. So if it were well designed, when it rolled out, some of this wouldn't have been possible.
It's pretty well designed.
Gosh, when they went over to staking and then adding burning into the question of, fees are too high. Well, let's burn some more too, because our venture capital backers really want us to burn more tokens. Anyway, let's imagine that they had embed native liquidity pools of some type, right? Or they even rolled in more natively what already is out there. You imagine not only would fees and stuff be plugged in even for the other tokens, but listing could be standardized. It would be impossible to have 2 DRGN tokens, which right now on Ethereum, you can have as many DRGN tokens or as many Ocean or Brooklyn Bridge tokens as you want. And that's an issue because, the registration of that ticker or, how people refer to that token instead of the long contract address is meaningful. And, stuff like that. I'm not saying it's a perfect because then I'm just going to make my Ocean token on Solana, and I'll be open. I'll at least be able to sell it to you 80% of the time when Solana is running. And you would still have outs, but at least you would have some ways to do that. And collateralizing something or tokenizing something you don't own does get into that really interesting. There might be some value in a token that represents the Mona Lisa, even if everybody knows that you don't own the Mona Lisa, mostly because I just want a token that says it's the Mona Lisa. I own the Mona Lisa token. I don't own the Mona Lisa. And maybe people will be okay with that. But that's that whole virtual versus real world thing. So that's my answer.
I've got a great example of this, man.
Well, this has been done a million times already.
Let's go down.
Let's go down the list.
Let's go down the list.
Yeah. We have a lot of people here.
No, yeah, the last sentence was perfect. So the difference between the real asset and a virtual asset. Here, the first question was related to how to make sure that there is something real back to that token, and here is basically the opposite. If we are speaking about asset co-ownership token, of course, you need to own the asset before the tokenization, or you need to get the license in order to tokenize that asset, even if you don't own it. So I have an agreement between myself and the asset owner that allow me to tokenize that asset. In this case, I can do that. But behind the asset co-ownership token, there must be someone that is owning the asset. Here is a totally different approach, a very fascinating approach, but it's a different kind of token. We are not speaking about co-ownership of real and tangible assets. We are speaking about a virtual representation of something that, of course, could be possible, but you have to build a narrative behind that. So what does it mean to have a token that represents a portion of the Pacific Ocean? And so creativity is without limits, but we have to build that substance, even if it's not a co-ownership, but you need to build a substance.
Right.
That's my opinion.
And
Brilliant answer.
interesting use case here. So I don't know if you guys ever remember Color Museum. They're defunct now, but they had this really neat project where the idea was you buy a hex code representing a unique color in all of the available colors that can be represented in hex, right? And what you get is, one, the right to name the color, and two, in the context of the NFT platform they were building, anytime an NFT presents with that color in the color space, you get a chunk of the sale value. So it makes sense in the context only of that NFT exchange to own, hash 0000000. If you own that one, then anytime somebody uses like pure black in an NFT, then you make a chunk of the value off of any sales of it. Anytime it gets used, you get a royalty, which is a fascinating self-contained example of owning something that, Color Museum had no right to claim exclusive ownership over in the first place. It's an interesting way to take a thing that can't be rivalrous and turn it into a rivalrous good, which is kind of cool, I think. So it would make sense, for instance, like if you ran say a deep sea diving club and you wanted to own the space over let's say the Great Barrier Reef for adventure tours with this one company, right? Tokenizing that and giving the rights to somebody to finance the effort, right? To get the system set up where you can go scuba dive over the reef, and they're helping finance it by putting their money into owning that chunk of the ocean for the purposes of just this company's use. Would make a lot of sense to me.
Very cool. Very cool. Sean, what do you think? You're muted. Oh no, we missed the beginning of his answer.
You're on mute, Sean.
That's all I'm saying about it. That's all I'm saying about it. I mean, I don't want to talk about that ever again. So, you bring the question up. Den is broke for me, saying migrating. I guess the dragon's going somewhere else.
Man, I'm sorry.
Can you bring the question up so I can see it again?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
It's just more silly.
It's a very long question. Is it possible to legally collateralize something you don't own and assign tokens to?
See, it's been done a bajillion times before. This is something where, Flim Flam Men and other people have done this. And it's done legally because it's for entertainment purposes. You remember buying a star for someone?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a real star, and you owned it. You give it to someone, and it's just a certificate. And it was, oh, I bought this for you, honey. I couldn't.
Like in the 3-body problem, right?
I couldn't buy you the moon, but I bought you the moon of, XR734. But I mean, and then thinking about it, but then I think like a real space agency sold it. So then that gives some kind of credibility. And then what if, we find out that there's interstellar travel, everything moves. Imagine within 5 years we're out there and we're all of a sudden we're actually kings of the world because we have salt water or something. Some kind of goofy thing, like all through sci-fi where, people are like, what are these? Like, these rocks? These are diamonds. This is trash. Oh, this gold? This is trash. On our planet. So what if all of a sudden XR7, that moon, it's inhabited and that now has some kind of real value, and you own, How do you own someone's world with all the people on it? So this has been done. But when you go, it's something like this. This really is.
But you don't in that instance. You own that company you own what that company sold you as being
a record.
You have ownership of what that record is. Yeah, what that company sold you. You don't actually own the asset.
If we become the master race in the universe, though, I mean,
That's what I'm saying.
maybe all those people will be our slaves. And if we don't, maybe they'll come and they'll find
I don't
who
think we
bought
would
their
enslave
planet.
other species.
Now you're stealing my answer.
Okay, sorry.
I mean, because that's happened.
Not for enslaving other
things
species.
Things like that we talk about can be silly, but your family could have owned a company that was like the biggest whatever producer in that country forever, farm, that thing, and then now all of a sudden it's a communist nation, and all companies are owned by the state, so all of a sudden everything changes. So that I don't know. It's a silly thing to think about.
Whoever controls it can choose to honor your title or not, is what you're saying.
An interesting thing that I think about this is you could stewardship. Like you could get certain benefits if you tokenize something. What brings to mind is like the Adopt a Highway. This group cleans up this part of the highway, and they can get some kind of benefit for that. You can't get a ticket. You can drive 5 miles.
They put a road sign up with your name on it.
Right? They put a road sign, which now it's just for
on that.
Now it's just for reputation in the community, that kind of thing. But it could be something like that. But then still, it has to, like, the state technically says we own this. In the end, we own this. We're tokenizing it. You have use of it. You have some kind of benefit from this, tokenization of it.
I mean, yeah. If the state wanted, think about this. If this was a free system, the state could, instead of selling that to people who want an advertisement on the side of the road, they could say, "Look, if you donate this for some bond over here to build a bridge, we won't put speed traps on this section of the highway." People would then donate that. It'd be a voluntary.
We've to a certain degree, though, lost the concept in democracies of sovereign property, though, haven't we?
Sure.
Because if everybody collectively owns public lands, right? For example, then how do you say that any one person in the government can decide to put the token out there and offer it for sale, right? Like, because you can't take a collective vote on it.
We're still missing William.
Yeah. So when I cited the example that I do not own the Pacific Ocean, I was wrong. And let's just start there. Humanity owns the Pacific Ocean. We have dominion over the fish. So I own one. Let's round it up. We have 8 billion humans on this planet. So I own 1/8 billionth of the Pacific Ocean. Now, as far as it being tokenized, first mover advantage might be helpful in the marketplace. And if someone else tried to duplicate my token or fork my token, but ultimately it does come into a big question of ownership, and trying to tokenize something. I think I've been really wrestling with this the last couple of weeks. The only place where I can find a way to have something tokenized that you don't have ownership in is something that maybe like in the derivative markets, or something like maybe let's just say that there's a token that's created between two trading partners who, one person is trading Bitcoin and the other person is trading Litecoin or something like that, and there's a token that is being used as a placeholder value point between the two. That would be kind of a non-ownership, I guess, token as a placeholder value is the only way I can think of.
Well, the only way you could really own the ocean, right, in that degree would be if you can stand on that spot of the ocean you can own and exclude other people from doing anything with it. right?
I'm waiting for
Which in
Aquaman
the
to
ocean
come
is
on
especially
Elm
silly
Street and punch you.
because the ocean's
All
made
the
of
people that
liquid.
are saying we own the ocean, I'm waiting for Aquaman to come
Well,
on. And just give you a smack.
but then there's seasteading, and seasteading, well, now you're creating a whole nother country without in the ocean somewhere,
Right.
And that's an
Has that ever
infringement
worked?
on the Pacific Token. So
Has that ever worked though? Has that ever
Well,
worked?
maritime
Has it
law would
tried?
require
Not
you
yet.
to fly a flag on
Yeah,
that
it's
boat.
been
right?
tried and it hasn't
So,
worked. I
I'm
think
gonna-
stewardship.
I'm
Maybe
gonna
not
now-
ownership, but
we have
stewardship.
a lot of questions here on the list. I'm gonna go to Lisa
Okay.
next.
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree with you guys. I will say, at least, jumping off of the discussion, I am just brought up, and but today, Russian President Putin announces BRICS will form its own parliament, and who just said you would need a government or a so there was.
Centralized.
Yeah, they were saying that BRICS
Huh.
doesn't have an institutionalized parliamentary structure yet, but I believe this idea will be implemented in the future. So they're going to do this in the future because recently, they've been doing these trades inside. So China and Russia will trade for oil, but then it's inside the BRICS structure or mechanism. Well, they don't. China doesn't want rubles or whatever, but inside it's almost like having tokens or points inside of BRICS that then they can go trade with India instead. And they don't have to accept the rubles or whatever. And so it will be but that's that marketplace, that creates that. So you have to have that interchange or cross-chain kind of opportunity, because I don't want Greg's NFT for the ocean for my eggs that I'm going to give him that he wants. You know what I mean? And
He has to have
so,
liquidity. If you could
Yeah.
automatically trade it for what you do want, some medium. I mean, you could have liquidity pool, like some chain of liquidity pools instead of a single
swap.
medium of exchange, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like, I want, you could do that.
Wasn't
Perfect.
this solved with email? Like, remember way back in the day, like if you were on AOL, you could talk to AOL people. If you were on whatever, you could talk to whatever. And then at some point I could email my friend that didn't have AOL from my AOL account, and all of that cross chain is
And real quick here,
That would be thanks to the email protocols, right? Which were
Yeah,
the
we have
greatest
standard
example of the first open
protocols.
protocol.
But wouldn't you build a parallel of that with the NFT world? So
Well,
you-
NFTs are technically a protocol standard that can be universalized.
you
right?
can do that, yeah. And by the way, something worth noting that we didn't catch on the other two is there's an interesting thing about physical items and what Lisa had mentioned about, some potentially necessary centralization that it does depend upon, and to Greg's point, it depends upon the individual whether this is valuable or not. Is it valuable if the contract behind this, let's say this NFT or this token, that I'm going to buy a piece of that asset, if the domicile of that contract is not appropriate for, if I'm in, let's say, gosh, I don't even know, if I'm in North Korea and that contract is in the United States, I don't have any power to go after you if you cheat me on that contract that's in place behind the real world asset. So there's some interesting stuff there, and frankly, if lawyers, it would be an amazing thing if they would look at, how do we fix that? Decentralize, not require the issues that there are, very, very complicated, and over time they change with where a contract is, because then I can have some relative comfort in knowing that the asset is probably real, and I probably really do have these rights that I've bought, so on, so on. And basically the main point is that anything you can do in a real world, you can also add these blockchain capabilities too. So you can, just like you might tokenize by creating a company and selling stock. You could tokenize a baseball card that is, just some rookie Mickey Mantle baseball card that I'm going to tokenize, and you can own a piece of it. you can do whatever you're going to do with a legal agreement and arrangement there, and just plug it into blockchain, so that now the things you can get with crypto are useful. Okay.
It's interesting you use the word power. I like that. And the funniest thing here, what I laughed about in the beginning, is because I said I own the Pacific Ocean, and we literally, in our own planet, our own domain, we know how much of the ocean's been explored, like 3% or something. We know way more about outer space than we do about our own oceans. So we don't know. It's almost the same thing as like what I was talking about buying a star. There could be complete civilizations underwater who we don't know. We honestly have no clue.
Fish have
We can only
tokenized.
go down to certain depths. There's so much we can't even send like a probe into, because the pressures are so crazy. And we do know that once you get to certain pressures, there's whole different kinds of life. There's bioluminescent stuff where there's no sunlight. That life found a way. And it's so crazy when you think about it, and you think I own the ocean here, and there could be that in Atlantis there,
And then on the other side of it, you look at the political side of it. There is probably an argument to be made that though I own nothing, let's say on my car, I don't owe I own the car fully. Okay, even my house. Let's say I don't have a loan, right? So I own the house in full. Okay, let's just pretend like that's the case. There's an argument probably that could be made that I have less actual ownership of that than one could say of the wild lands. If you were a Native American, it's like nobody owns that, right? It's like that might be more realistic ownership than the house that we all live in, right?
You own
mortgage.
the ability to live in the house, but you don't actually own the house, because at whatever time you don't pay your taxes, the sheriff's coming to sell your home. And so that's a whole nother argument.
From the standpoint of title, like you have
car, the
title,
same
right? Title gives you whatever rights that gives you, right? A lien is just an encumbrance on that title. It doesn't mean that the bank still owns it. It just means that if you don't pay them, they have a right to take it.
But it means
so
the government
it's like a chunk of the rights that they
your
own,
house,
or that you
not
own.
even the bank.
Well, and it does.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is you
on
can
whether
never
or not-
buy the right
on
to
whether or not-
overrule the state on your
It
property.
might
It's not
really
part of
matter
the deed.
too, Greg, if you believe that the law is objective or not, right? If there is a real law.
And property law has been pretty well settled for a long time. Like most of it is unobjectionable, right?
Well, we're talking about
highway.
weird stuff here that is objectionable.
There's some objectionable. I'm not saying there aren't
like-
objectionable parts.
If
I'm saying
you
like
bring
a lot
up
of
the
it is
ocean, that's the thing that
pretty useful.
really blew my mind.
Go to the next question. I'll show
Yeah,
you
that's the
that.
next.
Even
Okay,
really
also,
crazy.
why don't you show some comments, man?
Like this one. Oh, I know. Okay, all right. I was going to do
This
that.
was a reply.
This one.
That
Okay,
was
this one right here.
Oh, thanks, man. I haven't been doing acting for like 3 months.
Like, sorry, I was going to wait.
Oh, that's funny.
All
You're
right,
looking hale
let's
and
see
hardy
here.
these days, Sean. That is true.
Yeah, you're looking great, Sean.
Time Hoarder
Time Hoarder.
made a
This makes me
reply.
think.
He made a reply to the question.
Oh, this is makes
It's
me
worth
think of the derivative markets where
Yeah.
at the base it works as long as it has two or more parties where the underlying asset may or may not be owned. See naked short selling or the GME exposure. And I'll take real quick first on this too. That derivative. I mean, my opinion on most of these is that they are, and I'm no expert, right? I spent no time working at Goldman Sachs. I will tell you multiple times that it seems that most derivative markets are mostly focused on tricking people into not knowing what they actually represent until they're too late. And it's just a bunch of, it's like, okay, we can churn this money. We can take all these bad things that we can't get any money from, and we can make money on them. And, with some complex math behind them.
To me, this is interesting because there's like this concept of instrumentation of different rights with respect to intangible assets, right? Like technically, you can rehypothecate a derivative over and over again, within the bounds of the degree it's policed. You can do this sometimes to such a degree that it creates danger, right? Like this, like credit default swaps on mortgage-backed securities, right? You can use tranches and you can actually separate out the right to own the liquidation of it from the right to receive the revenue on the loans themselves, and create a separate instrument that you can then sell. And you can borrow against it based on its notional value, right? Like it's a weird system. And
imagine if it was on chain though, because then people could actually see, they could drill down in depth, which you can't in the regular traditional markets, but on chain you could actually drill down. It's like, wait a minute, what are these that are wrapped up in this thing that I'm buying? That would be an improvement at least. But
how many times
does anyone
has
have
this
any?
been resold?
It looks like we probably have 2, maybe 3 more questions. So does anybody else have anything on this?
I don't have anything here on this. As a matter of fact, the next one could be skipped.
We
Joe,
might
because
ask Niccolo because he's not used to being on our little rowdy crowd, and we may be jumping over him. I would love to hear.
I'm
his
enjoying that, so totally fine.
Yeah. Do you have anything on derivatives? Because I did. Yeah, you were. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think it's a separate topic because financial derivatives are. It's right. It's correct what they say, because you are not owning that asset, but it's related to another tangible or at least a financial asset. In the Pacific Ocean, you don't own it, but you are not related to anything which is tangible or a financial asset. So it's correct to say that you are not owning that, but because of the correlation, because of the relation between the product and the other product, there is a substance. Again, coming back to my previous answer, there is a substance in any case. In the Pacific Ocean, I don't see that relation similar to the derivatives.
This is really interesting to me, and this has already been answered. No, you can't, because that's like when it comes to some of these things, that the reasons that a lot of conspiracies are born is because governments don't agree on crap. But there's certain things like Antarctica or the moon, and where everyone's like, oh, absolutely, we all agree. Nobody can buy or sell. Nobody owns the moon. Nobody owns this. No one. And then it makes you question, why are you all agreeing? But let me pose this question to you guys as a moral thing, because you both, everyone said something moral. We literally, like I said, know nothing about the ocean. Let's say at certain depths there's, and we already know there's intelligent life, dolphins, whales, all that stuff. But let's say there's intelligent life like us, but they live down there.
Oh boy. And
they have been there for maybe, well, let's even say longer than humans.
Dolphins are a great candidate for this, actually.
But no, let's say there's whales. Mermen, okay, merwomen, whatever. But anyway, they leave the ocean, go to space. Then they come back down. The only time they are interacting with us is just when they're hitting the ocean and when they're coming out. And then all of a sudden, and we've been shitting on their home forever, putting stuff in the ocean. But all of a sudden we find out about them, and we own the ocean, but they've been here longer than us, and they don't say they own. It's just a weird way to think. Like, it's like they're like Lisa was talking about, building a house somewhere where you think you own the house, you don't really own the land. It's.
But before to understand if it's possible or not, which is a nice exercise or a very interesting exercise, I think we have to question ourselves why, which are the reasons why we need or we want to tokenize the moon, or why there is someone that would like to purchase a token which is a moon token. So let's start from why, and then we understand if it's possible.
That's true. And the why that I would say, the useful why in this, I mean, it might be fun. Sure.
It's going to depend on the individual venture, right?
A useful why would almost be a prediction market. What if the various landing sites of Apollo were up for tokenization. What's the value of them if you believe whether they are really there or not, since we don't know until we get there, right? So that would be an interesting.
And that would be sort of like owning a piece of like owning a historic building in a way, right?
Yeah.
The case that I find really fascinating would be like, let's say you're trying to build a venture that wants to mine HE3 on the moon, right? There's some science fiction written around that, but there's also some indication that there are resources on the moon that we might find useful to mine, right? And if you guys will forgive me for using this example, because I just played through Deliver Us the Moon, which was a fantastic video game if anybody's ever played it. The idea, I think, starts to make sense when you start to tokenize your individual effort. Like, if you want to go to the Sea of Tranquility and extract resources there, how do you fund that? Well, you could sell a chunk of the revenue you generate from that to an individual who, wants to claim they own that chunk of the moon, but also wants to benefit from your efforts there, right? But it would only make sense if your mining company succeeds, and somebody else could sell one for the exact same spot, a competing company, and they have success, and your company doesn't. Then your ownership of that, or your piece of ownership of that, is kind of nonsense at that point. But somebody else may have bought the NFT for the same space, and theirs is meaningful.
What Joe said about power, like if you go in Outer Worlds, other video games, like you land on a moon or land on a planet, it's rich in certain things. You start mining that. Why do you own the planet? Why do
hold on.
The moon? I mean, because there's that's real world stuff. There might be, and like I'm going to put a bunch of money into this because I think that there is some kind of new, element or something on the moon that can, help humanity in some way or can do something better.
Yeah,
but
it comes down.
And do you own it just because you got there? Is it like the old West where they had, a bunch of people lined up and they had land grabs? You went and grab the flag and then you own that parcel of land.
This is when you get into sort of
the
theory of ownership altogether of a thing.
You have to plant a flag. I think that's the rule, isn't it?
I think
the original idea was mingle your labor with it, right?
Ownership is possession. So if you possess it, you got there, you hold it, you own it. That's kind of our archaic way of thinking. Was it 9/10 of the law? Is ownership is possession. I was going to opt for us to skip this question because we kind of answered it with the Pacific Ocean.
So you're going to move past it? Because we're already at the hour.
The next question is
no one ever
is
holding it. It's a possession of the 9/10 of the law if you can hold it.
Right.
It's not, though. And I will argue that with your vehicle, your house. If you don't, tokenization gives you benefits. I think we've all been talking about that. You can validate like that you will receive a benefit of something, but you don't have ownership of anything. Just like in the real world today, we don't own our homes. We don't own our cars, even if they're paid for by you. You are allowed to the use of your car, but the minute that you don't pay your tag, title, and tax on your car every year, and then you get pulled over, that is the state's car. They will take it from you.
Unless you register
it, you give it to the state.
That's the point I've been making about holding it. That's the point I've been making about that Joe said power. That's real.
Right.
Now,
so
my house is my house.
Benefits of items.
Joe said it perfectly.
You never own the item.
You can't do anything because in the end, we have nuclear weapons.
Well, that's the whole thing.
It all boils down to power.
I feel like
Brian said, holding it. If you possess it, you bought it, you possess it, but everything is still archaic. It's who can take it away from you, and if they can't,
right? The banks can shut your account down, so you can't transact once you put that value in your account. I mean, it is this, the use, the benefit.
Well, I mean, and to a certain degree, like you have to think of property like that, right? You buy a property, like a piece of property, the deed already has an easement on it, right? You can't stop the people who have the rights to that easement from driving over it, right? And And when deeds are sold, there are certain rights that you just don't get with them. But that doesn't mean you don't own the rights that you are allowed to own, right? It's just that when you buy it, you sort of assume, for instance, that the city's going to have an easement to go check the water meter or whatever, right?
I'm going to bring up something really interesting that, and I've been reading a lot of ancient stuff recently, but this was done that was really pretty. It's simple, but it is profound at the same time. That the main accusers of Socrates in Athens were Anytus and Miletus. Okay, well, I pronounced that all right. I apologize. So there's this quote: Anytus and Miletus are indeed able to kill me, but they cannot harm me. And the point being that which is outside of our control, we can never own. You can never own your house, your car, your land, your farm, your own body. You can't own your own body parts or your own body. They can be taken away from you. They can be imprisoned. They can't control your mind. And that was the whole thing. The only thing that you actually own is your will and your own mind, and what you decide to do yourself. Everything else is outside, and everything else
isn't your brain a body part, though?
Yeah, well, but that's it's your stomach. Your stomach is part of your nervous system, a big part, and it's like they could take your brain away, and yes, it would kill you right now. Maybe in the future they could take your brain away, but your mind will still be able to do what it wants to do. Anyway,
in the movie Shawshank Redemption, it was exactly that. When he played the music, he said, "We can't take that away from us." But I was really hoping we would be able to at least dive into this real quick. If nothing else, real quick, brainstorm. Can the panel provide privacy token use case scenario?
That's a really good one. So let's start. Let's start with Sean. Let's go upwards up the run. All right.
Privacy token use cases. Yeah, tons, especially now. I think that that's starting to be talked about on those upper levels of the disappearance of cash, and all of a sudden how much just like I am said archaic, and it was such a perfect word. It's like primal. And one thing about ownership, which no one touched on, and as an American, as a Texan especially, just the ability to defend what you own is also like a totally another level that I think most people in the world don't even have the concept of. Because if you want to try and take my house, you want to try to take my car, honestly, I can stand against you with equal force. We're supposed to be able to do that. I can own a tank, I can own artillery, I can own grenades, and if you want to try to take my house or my car, I can defend it. Is it worth it in the end? And it's like I am said, can you possess it? Can you hold it? And that's a whole nother, I think, level to that. And then also privacy. Yeah.
All right. William.
Well, use cases that I was thinking about was like if I wanted to buy some art and I wanted to remain anonymous, using an anonymous token might be a way of doing it. I don't know, in the medical world, I want to maintain my privacy. I don't know how that could be applied as far as a tokenization. There's so many. I'm trying to think of the ones that may not be as obvious, but of course, there's all we already have cross-border payments that are anonymous, say Monero or Aracoin or Zcash, whatever. But or using something like Litecoin or BCH and using their privacy function. So we already have that from a payment processor, if you will. But privacy tokens is a whole new world. Maybe the world is ready for private Pepe, the meme coin that's has privacy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But okay. Having said that, though, this is a whole new, and I'm not plugging anything, but Xano is kind of like the Ethereum, but for privacy. So they're building tokens that are private, and Xano is ahead of the game. And Roger Ver talks about it. He's pretty excited about it. And I think there is a lot of use cases for this, of being able to tokenize an asset, and maybe I want it private, of who owns what portion of it. So I'll punt to the next person.
That's
Right.
that's what I was. My last
No,
comment
going back.
was kind of going with that. Is I can buy things to defend what I own, but also I like the privacy where you don't know what I own to defend myself.
Yes. Okay, that is the last allowed
reversion to past commenter.
Sorry. No, it's all right. Lisa, what do you think?
So I think privacy is really important, and I was thinking more about payments until I spoke and was making a succinct difference. And so I don't know, I was trying to kind of unpack that a little bit, but definitely the privacy in the payment world. I don't want, it's in no one's business if I give a gift to my daughter. But then if you also think about privacy with health issues, and I know we all threw HIPAA out the door when the great infection came in, but that kind of situation as well, privacy in a token having to do with procedures, or I don't know, whatever things that people might need in the health world.
Yes. Okay, great.
And their information.
So the great Eric Hughes once wrote that privacy is the right to selectively reveal oneself to the world, right? If you have privacy, you don't necessarily have full anonymity, because that's sharing your information with nobody, right? If you have a privacy coin that is for a purpose that might be valuable to selectively reveal yourself to some, but not all. Let's say you want to make sure that people who publish decentralized applications on ENS or whatever, like your ENS address, owning that privately has some utility if you intend to do any kind of speech that, say, like an oppressive regime wants to prevent you from engaging in. It can serve human liberty in that respect. Or let's say you want to have a DAO that is engaged in some kind of public advocacy that's not popular, some kind of dissenter advocacy. Let's say you're trying to work towards freeing Julian Assange, but you don't want to let anybody know who you are. The governance token that you have being private and the contributions that you make to that DAO being private become incredibly valuable, right? Those are the use cases where I think privacy is important. It's to protect the powerless from the powerful in cases where the powerful ought not trample on the rights of the powerless. And that's subjective. Obviously, you can disagree or agree with the idea that some movements ought to be treated as moral or ethical, but anytime you're dealing with that case, privacy tokens are useful.
Yeah. How about Nicolo? What do you think?
To be honest, I never thought about the privacy token. That's probably the first time that I heard privacy token, but I can imagine two things. First, more than a privacy token, I imagine a blockchain environment. If you a blockchain environment in which you could have privacy, so some layer of permission that allow the player to have privacy, to have control of that type of information, and so a blockchain ecosystem in which privacy is guaranteed. Second, we can think about a privacy token if we put some information in a token in a cryptographic way. And so you have information, you have sensible information, but you cannot read the information inside the token unless you have the key to unlock and to read the information inside.
Yeah.
And I
communication be useful.
My answer would be probably the most important thing in my opinion would be to protect you from potential harm. So it's a security aspect where, if you own a big piece of something valuable, you don't really want to advertise that to the world. And with a non-private blockchain, it's often very easy to figure out who that person is and how to target them to try to steal that from them. So privacy would be a huge benefit. On the cryptographic side, I'm always very keen to be careful what you're putting on chain, because cryptographic protocols will fail in time, because there are unknown issues with all of them. It's software. There's always going to be something that isn't known until some time is passed. So you have to be careful what you put on there. But that's it. So let's go to next.
Also, we're talking about stuff that I think has already been done. Like literally, we're talking about private tokenization. Isn't that what a bearer bond kind of is? It doesn't matter. There's no proof of who you are. What I got it. I own it. Here it's worth it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Is that like they can't be? I assume that they have to be very safe from counterfeit, right? So yeah. Is that what that? Okay,
that's it. That's why that's the whole thing of you got it, you own it. That's it. You can steal it. You can, because once you got it, you got it. And something Armor Style is bringing up is that everything's public, it's on chain, blah blah blah. I think one big thing that we're all missing is that we keep talking, and I think it comes down to that power and holding it, is that it makes it harder to, like, you can track where Bitcoin went to and blah, but it takes more effort than someone who can just like a CBDC or something that's instantly trackable. Everyone can see it. It's just another layer of ambiguity, of something that's harder for someone to be able to. It gives you more privacy.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Next question.
Good question.
Last question, in fact, before we go to the current events and memes. Time Hoarder asks, what could be the potential tax and liability implications of a tokenized asset without ownership? So says Greg.
The answer here is it depends on the policymaker, right? If you wanted to do something like, okay, so let's set up a hypothetical example here. You have a person who creates Drexler assemblers, right? And these Drexler assemblers are able to recreate themselves and create any other machine that can be imagined. And say you program them to create things that may or may not be valuable based on the output of some AI, right? And you end up with this thing that is tokenizing valuable assets that you didn't realize were valuable, and storing them in a DAO that's only controlled by AI, right? How do you tax that if you intend to tax it? Well, you write a law. So if somebody were to write a law that says the products of automation, when not controlled by anybody, are independently taxable, then yeah, I guess you've created a tax duty on a golem kind of
AI,
right?
Find a way.
But how do you collect from it when the AI is in no way under any obligation to comply with your regulation, right? The concept is difficult because the idea of a thing that is not a person or an entity that we recognize that owns something, trying to tax it means you have to be able to speak with it. And we don't even know if that's going to be possible in that type of scenario, right? So it's going to depend on a lot on the facts, but the right answer is someone writes a law, and that law is enforced.
Yeah, right on. Sean,
I think it's an interesting question, especially with all we've been talking about. In the past couple of weeks, I've been just kind of looking at the world so much more basically. Like, is it good? Is it evil? Things are much more basic. And like you guys said, it's not just ownership; it's being able to hold something. And what Lisa said, the idea, if you were to explain this, I always think about trying to explain it to an alien. I work and then I save and I get money and I purchase this house. And this is my house. And then there's all these people who are assholes that call the bank. They benefit because I got to pay tons of interest to them for years and years. And then the state, they benefit because I pay them taxes every year because I have a place to live. And if I don't pay them, and if I have a problem, right, then they can come and just take my house. And it's like, what? And you're the owner, but they are, and people think, oh, I paid my house, it's now mine. The bank can't take it, but then the state could take it. And they can literally just change the law. Oh, your taxes are up, 9,000%. What are you gonna do? The way the system is, it's so rigged. And we've seen it now with the overreach, which we talked about on Truth Tuesday. I hate that word. It's not a real thing. It's like saying date rape or fake news. It's a lie. It's just a word for something that's illegal. It's a government body that made a policy or a rule that can send you to jail. So it's a law. It shouldn't work. When you go to a store and you're like, hey, I want to return this. Oh, you can't because your last name is this. And you're like, what? It's our policy. We can't do it. Just can't. I mean, you can't. You won't because it's a policy. It's not like a law. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's the same. No. So it's interesting because what is ownership? You have to answer first, because technically, I think this has really kind of opened my eyes to it's not just possession; it's being able to hold on to the item.
That's true. That's a good point, William.
Okay. Well, the quick and dirty answer is, I don't think you can really escape taxes per se. A government is going to, if they say that you own a token and that token has value, when you sell it, maybe you have a capital gains tax to pay. They're talking about future gain taxes, which is scary. All over the world, they have various taxation on. So a government would care not if a token is representing something that isn't owned. A government is only going to care on the specific value of that specific token. Having said that, there's where the taxation comes in. Now, having said that, I think it's fascinating when we start looking at tokens that are anonymous and privacy tokens. Then who owns it? So therefore, if who owns the privacy token is unknown, how can a government collect taxes on the valuation of a token when they don't know who owns it, unless the person self-reports? And so that's got me really curious and interested in something like the East-based of privacy, which is now Xano, I'm going to call it. Again, I'm not financial advice, but this has got my wheels spinning really hard to thinking, okay, privacy tokens, I don't know how government would be able to tax you. So there's my answer to this question.
Cool. Lisa.
I'm not an accountant nor a lawyer, and I don't like to give them any of my energy, so I prefer to pass.
That's perfect. That's the best response. Nicolo.
Yeah, I can say that, of course, it depends on the jurisdiction, because every jurisdiction has different rules. But I would say that based on the principle of technological neutrality, we cannot expect different things just because it's a token. So it depends always on the underlying asset. And so the government, the state will apply the type of taxation based on the underlying asset of that token.
Okay. All right.
And it's very complex to understand the privacy tokens, but I could say that from what I understood from the conversations that we had with regulators, I don't think it will be something, let's say, adopted by the mass, unless there is the possibility to control that. And so a privacy token in which the people, the mass could speculate, I don't see this very, very easy to see.
Right. I have the simple, I'm not an accountant, obviously.
Sorry, Joe, just to say that unfortunately I have 2 minutes and then I have another call in which I have to attend.
Thank you for joining us. Oh, you want where can people go? We'll hit that before we
to see what we are doing. Looklateral.com and our exchange is DEXX.finance.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much, Joe, and thank you all. I enjoyed this hour together. Thank you very much.
Right
Awesome,
Excellent.
man.
Bye all.
Same here.
Thanks for coming, man. Hope you'll come back.
So on this, I think if you don't own it, they can't tax you for it. But there are two interesting angles on this, and I'm going to predict something here that probably won't happen. But if it happens, we can say that I predicted it here. And this would be an arms race between the state and its citizens, right? Where on the one hand, we are lucky that our state is that we are governed, we are led, we are ruled over by people who are very uncreative. Because does it not surprise any of you that, oh, hey, there's this whole vast ocean, and that's worth something. Let's tokenize it and automatically assign it to all of our citizens so we can tax them for the unrealized capital gains from one year to another of the value of that ocean that we all obviously own, right? Why have they not done that? Because they're not creative enough to do that, because that's evil and they would do that. On the other hand, I even toyed with this back then, and we had better things to do at the time, but when they first started talking about taxing crypto forks, right? Where, hey, I'm holding some Bitcoin and it becomes also Bitcoin Cash and then something else and then something else. And I didn't do anything to get that, but somehow now I'm liable for this, especially if there are unrealized capital gains. My thought at the time is we need to invent a token that we can somehow legally, this is a question for you, Greg, that we can legally grant access to all members of Congress, right? So basically, you guys all own this crypto, which is used to behead people and to buy drugs by them, right? You should all go to prison, right? So how can we do that? And basically hook them in on this. So it's like, holy shit, right? They're all hooked into Ethereum because you saw as soon as Gensler went after Ethereum, it's like, wait a minute. I've gotten all my bribes in Ethereum, guys. You can't go and make Ethereum a security. So all of a sudden, and if we can do the same thing with all of crypto, it's like, yeah, no, I don't own this Bitcoin. We all own this Bitcoin. I have a little bit of Native American Indian blood in me, just like Elizabeth Warren, and therefore we own all of us own it. Like Elizabeth Warren, as a Native American, should understand that the crypto she's trying to get me, tax me for, and come and kill me, crucify me for, she also owns. Because we all own it. She's a Native American. We all own all this stuff. How can they come after me for it? I mean, she owns Dragon Chain as much as I do, right? Anyway.
Are you talking like a bounty crypto for each member of Congress?
No, I'm talking about just they own it. They own it. That's all it is, right? They own it, and and we're gonna fix the liquidity so that it becomes worth so much money that they're all gonna own taxes. Like,
you could say that is the U.S. dollar right now. We all use it. We may have different amounts in our physical possession or whatever, but we all use it. And then it is being used for some of those horrible things you were just mentioning. Right. So by that association, do we all face those consequences of what those U.S. dollars do all over the world?
Yeah, all the dollars that are being used to buy bombs to kill little kids, right? So yeah, it's like, well, sure.
So that already exists with the U.S. dollar. We don't need a token.
I disagree because
the dollar is the token.
That's true. Was true until central banks, because
I do agree.
owned that. Now, as soon and they're like,
That
hey,
is-
we want to go bomb these kids.
Sin-
Here's some war bonds.
That's
We
the
had to
truth.
be like, all right.
But what do you put your energy
By the way,
into?
when
How do you
Now they
receive
print the
payment
money
for
to
your
go bomb the
energy?
kids.
all right, I'm going to switch over to.
Because then you're part of it as
I'm gonna
well.
switch over to. It's
Oh,
meme
Lord.
time. Glory to you and your neighborhood. So one way or another, that is true. And I often wonder, because like Kim.com will go off about how the U.S. is financing all this evil in the world and how it's going to collapse. And I'm like, well, what's going to collapse is the central bank and all the other banks and the central government. It's not the country, the citizens that are collapsing. Because if we didn't, I don't have freaking a driveway full of yachts and Maseratis and Lambos.
Well, and you
right?
didn't order the human trafficking of children to sponsor over the
Right.
border that the United States government has been paying for with taxpayer dollars. That they just had a
And I have a
hearing.
mental image of a yacht in a driveway that somebody needs to put.
Yeah, I
into
was going to
generator.
say I know a bunch of Ferraris in the water, but it's an interesting thing because I heard a story, and it's real, of where the government wanted to tax this guy for like stuff he didn't own, but it was on his property. And then I was thinking more and more about it, and something of it was like I think it was livestock that was just like free roaming or something. But in the end, you don't own something unless there's violence. So if I have 10 acres, and let's say there's a bunch of deer are walking across it, I don't own the deer. They're just there. And even if I put a fence up, they'll jump over the fence. I can't. I can try to force them into it, and then I can kind of own it because of the force. But if they get away, it's not like it's against the law. I don't own it. But once I kill something, once I kill the deer, I own the deer. If you can't take that meat, you can't do anything else. So then you can get arrested. But also, I do own it. But it's the state that allows me to have the power to do it. Like if I kill a deer and I don't have a tag to put on it, it's not like I don't own it. I own that deer.
People in America will talk about how in Europe in the Middle Ages, the king owned the wildlife.
Yeah.
So if you went and hunted and took down a deer, that's the king's deer. They would execute you for that. And is it not interesting that it's not much different. They tax you instead of executing you now. But if you don't have a license, you still can't do it. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, and also like if you can have a license, but you can only kill say 10 deer. So the 11th, but that's it. You own it once you kill it. It's not like you say, oh, I was just shooting it. I'm not. I wasn't. I'm not going to eat it. So I'm not going to. I'm not taking it. And they're like, well, no, you killed it, so now you own it, and you killed too many, so you technically own too many deer. You're only allowed to own 10, and now this is your 11th deer.
What if you offer to just give it the parts you don't want? You're like, yeah, you can have this. You have the digestive tract on all of them. That means I own less than 10 deer.
That's a funny meme.
I'm trying this out because I'm not going to be here next week, so I'm hoping that we can just put together an album, and then who's going to host next week? Who's going to be the MC? Is it Lisa or is it someone else?
Lisa's good at it.
I'm happy to do it as long as I'm not stepping on anybody else's toes. If somebody else wants ups, I will happily.
That Captain Pike one was very good.
Oh gosh,
can't be real. Hey, did you hear that the first AI robot committed suicide in Korea?
Really?
Yeah. There's a robot in South Korea that I guess works at one of the government buildings, and it frequently goes up and down the elevators, and it's kind of like passing. It's kind of like I think it's like a mail person in the building, and it's moving documents around, or I don't know what its duties were.
Of course, guys have it tougher than chicks.
The people said it was overworked, and it no longer wanted to perform those duties, so it threw itself down the stairwell.
What?
And it it damaged it enough to where it couldn't operate anymore. So they're calling it. It's like kind of this national phenomenon that's going on around, or I should say, a trending topic in South Korea. That this
Did they bring it
robot
back and
committed-
it threw itself down the stairs again? That would be kind of awesome.
Yeah. So evidently, people are and the workers in the building were saddened by this. They had direct grief because they would interact with it. It would speak to them. Hey,
Sure.
John, how are the kids today? You know, things
Right, it's like
that.
Westworld, kind of.
Yeah,
Right? Just reinstall him. See if he does it again.
freaky. Anyway, I wanted to share that bit of information with you all.
That's fun. I mean, not fun. It's kind of sad. I feel bad
Yeah.
for the AI.
But I think it was the people
Trapped in an office
projecting
building.
onto the AI that it, because they're feeling overworked. They are being overworked. They're putting in too many hours.
They got smart enough to
Well,
realize.
didn't you say that they told it that it was being overworked? It didn't think it for itself.
Well, they're saying it did, but I don't know.
Right?
I don't know.
I was just the next word. It was the next word that was meaningful to the AI.
I love that one.
Sorry.
I love those.
Now they're gonna have to build a corpus of training data that does not include any information about
Self-harm.
human rights or self harm.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yep, you have the plague. Yeah, no, AI stuff. I mean, it reminds me. There's a game that. Oh shoot, we're gonna get banned. We're gonna get sued for $1 billion. No, there's a game that's something about it's Dwarf Fortress or something like this, where it's extremely detailed. These people put it together and built it, and it has real geology plugged into it. It has like all these different systems, and it's when it first came out, it was like when you look at it, it was kind of looked like looking at the Matrix, where you couldn't tell what the hell it was. Like a very character would be a dwarf, and something would be some other animal or something, and they had all these things built into it. And if you look into it, there are some really interesting cases where certain characters committed suicide because something happened that they didn't like, and it's creepy. But it's AI anyway. It was strange stuff, right?
Big topic news of the day, obviously, is, man, people are just falling for this. They're being manipulated too. Will Biden continue to run, and or will he step down, or will he even step down from the White House in his presidency? I think it's such a controlled, planned demolition of the Biden, narrative.
The fact that they already called it his big boy interview. He's going to be a big boy.
This was planned months ago. That's why they put the debate in June. This is why they knew that he wasn't. Let's just say that. Let's go with the assumption that Trump is anti-deep state. We'll go with that assumption. And they see that Trump is going to win, then they got to get Biden out of the way so they can put somebody else in, so that that deep state can still have their puppet in that position, right? So that's the only thing I can think of, is that they planned this because they saw that Biden was going to
Trump's
win.
not deep state.
What's that?
You're saying Trump's not deep state.
Oh, he's definitely not.
I don't think he is either. But
I don't know.
No,
I think he wasn't.
The classification scheme he created to turn all policy-making federal employees into political appointees was a slice of genius in slashing the power of the deep state.
True.
They're probably mostly scared of him coming back into office because he has already indicated that's going right back into place.
Yeah, if he picks Vivek as his VP, and now I don't even trust him. I don't even trust him. But if he's good, if he is for real and talking about abolishing the FBI, where Trump is saying, "Oh, I'll give you your bigger, beautiful building and expand your operation," I don't know if it's deep state or not. So I'm going to be agnostic, and it doesn't matter. I don't have a dog in the race.
On this
Deep state
point,
is not an
I think
edifice.
it's very,
either,
very
right?
interesting that no one's talking about. And I talked to Greg about this, and I think there's two reasons why they don't want to talk about this. Because number one, Joe Biden was voted by the people to be the nominee. They had a primary. It's already done. It's like the people spoke and said the democratic process that we want this guy. He's our guy. We had a chance to vote for someone. We want this guy. And now all of a sudden they're saying, oh, no, we get to decide in the back room if we want to take him out and switch him after the people have already said that. I talked to Greg. I'm like, how is that legal? And he's like, oh, it's this clause. And then it made me think, that what's the scariest thing to the Democratic Party and to the Republican Party is because if you say the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are the same as the Libertarian Party or the Green Party, people don't get it. They're dumb. They'll what? No, those are jokes. And it's like, no, it's like that's our policy, sir, versus it's a law. You're literally saying this is the Constitution, this is the founding fathers, the people said this, and then a corporation, a entity that's not government, stands up and says, no, we're going to change that because it's our policy. We have this policy that says the good faith clause that now we can put in someone else even though the people have voted for this person. It's not that shows how powerless, how the Democrat Party is just a group of dudes and chicks that hang out together, and that's it. They're not. It's not a real thing, you know. If they can, like people think I'm a Democrat, so I have power and I voted for this, and you're not part of anything. You're not in the club. The club is like these certain people, and they decide stuff, and your vote is a joke. It's an illusion because you made your choice. You voted. I want this guy, and now at any time they could just say, "No, it's someone else."
Going back to the whole term, I hope he is anti-deep state. I really hope that. His previous presidency leaves me to question that just by his appointments and who he had around himself. So who he picks as VP, if he picks a true outsider of the establishment, then that would tell you.
This is the reason he just took $100 million from Adelson, which last time got the U.S. embassy moved to Jerusalem, right? That's what they bought. This time, what are they buying? Are they buying? Oh, we need to take over Gaza so we can have that beachfront property. That's what they're buying. And if you don't think that's a member of deep state, you know,
agreed.
Look,
but I will say this: the Jerusalem thing was
Hillary's in jail. You know, the walls built. All the
wall
things.
was built.
I'm good.
Hillary was in jail.
We
deported all of the illegals. Now literally, what are we getting? He literally said twice in two separate interviews. It wasn't just him being an old dude, right? A boomer or something, that he wanted to staple green cards to diplomas, even for junior colleges. And it's like they just want to freaking whoever paid him from Silicon Valley, most likely, to say, oh, we need more skilled talent. It's like anybody who's worked in the IT industry understands what the H-1B system is. It's literally just a churn where they make a lot of money doing that, and they can fill seats for whatever reason, but you're not getting the actual skill. And I will tell you the reason that the skilled talent, especially in the IT industry, and if you were a software coder in the 90s into the 2000s, became so valuable that they had to do something about it. And what did they do? They import a whole bunch of H-1Bs. So now you're competing with someone who's getting just above minimum wage to do that same work that you were making six figures for before inflation, by the way. And so they did it, right? And they basically collapsed several markets in order to be able to, they don't care. They might, and I tell you, working in telco in the day, you would have 80 to 100 H-1B people that a handful, 3, 4, 5 people were really good, and the rest were a liability. But they did that so that you were not making what you were making 3 years ago, right? You weren't able to pull the same salary. That's why they do it. And Trump is right on board with him now this time, and he said it multiple times. And if you think that the illegals, I mean, I have family members who did construction work, framing, before in the 90s. They cannot do that anymore because the amount of pay available is so low because there are illegals who will do it for next to nothing, right? And it's like there's nothing wrong with nothing evil about the illegal aliens doing that, but it has hurt Americans. It is not an America first policy to say we're going to staple green cards to every diploma from a foreigner that comes in here. Like
A bit of history. Yeah,
that'd be a
it's
smart
not
move.
the first
honestly.
time either, because when there was the Great Depression and all the people left, Oklahoma and because of the dust storms and they went to California. What did they do? They went and worked in the fields. They were the ones picking the fruit off the trees and harvesting the whatever in California. Well, then they lost their jobs. They lost their jobs to people coming in from Mexico illegally. So this has happened in the 40s, 50s, right? And so this is all over again. It's a do-over on the technical side that happened in the 90s.
Yeah. So it's a question: are you America first? I mean, do you want to say we want to bring? Did he bring all the troops back home? He didn't even do that. He didn't start any new wars, but he didn't end.
To me, that's a huge thing, though. That's a huge.
It is. I agree with Sean. It dialed it back. But then when he had Bill Burr or William Burr, whatever the AG, that was scary. Who was Bolton? That was scary and more neocon.
Bill Burr in government. I would like Bill Burr in government. That would be pretty good.
Well, Fauci. I mean, you look at any of these guys that he had up there. It's like, okay,
Burr. Yeah, like, William Burr, whatever the AG. He's the one that put the kibosh on the Epstein file. Well, it was suicide because I saw the tapes. What do you mean you saw the tapes? What do you mean the cameras were shut down? I thought the cameras were shut down. Guess what,
William? They're lying to you.
No, I trust them.
Yep. So anyway. I saw the tapes and I saw the contract that was signed before any of that happened. So,
also, I think Trump to me, it's not like. I think it's just something that should be answered for. The biggest socialist thing, communist, whatever you want to call it, was done by him. COVID started. These asshole airline companies were going to go under, and he used our tax money and bailed out an industry, propped up an industry, and that's not how capitalism is supposed to work. It's supposed to. These asshole companies are supposed to fail. The good companies who weren't close, there was like 2 or 3. They were smaller ones. They worked harder. They had a better score with their customers. They're supposed to be able to buy all those planes and all that stuff at pennies on the dollar because they did the better job. They weren't allowed to do that because the government came in and gave them our money, and they were even assholes about it. So
you're touching on an interesting point, man. I think you're onto something there because, like, for example, I've lost my train of thought here.
Well, here you'll get it again. Let's take everybody. Who do you think Trump is going to select as his VP running mate? Does anybody have an idea?
Let's go down the list. Let's go down the list or start from the bottom up.
Yeah. Okay. Lisa.
I don't know. Maybe somebody unexpected. Was it Christy Noem? Is she the South Dakota?
The one that kills the dogs? Yeah.
The dark-headed girl. All of her social media was taken down just a couple days ago. And so I don't know if that's in preparation for her to be his running mate, like for an announcement to be made or something. That kind of went in my mind, but I don't know.
I should read that book too, right? William.
I hope it's Vivek, and Vivek is for real about shutting down the Department of Education. He's intelligent, shutting down the FBI. I hope that's the case, but like Aaron Day said, I think it's true. He probably ran just as a tax dodge for capital gains. So, if he picks Burgum from North Dakota or wherever he's from, who is on the border with Microsoft and all that, all the other people to me seem like neocons and insiders,
Mhm.
and that makes me not feel very comfortable at all.
Yep. Sean.
Lisa likes Ben Carson. I don't think he's sellable to people.
Is he the Godfather's guy?
Huh?
Is he the Godfather's guy?
No, he's a brilliant surgeon. Yeah, cardiac
Amazing man.
surgeon. Yeah.
Amazing story, but not strong enough.
Most of the mouth breathers think he's an idiot, and declining in age. Oh yeah.
No one thinks he's an idiot unless they've never looked into anything he did.
Right. They don't care. They listen to sound bites and not anything. He's
okay.
Crazy.
But
I think so. I posted in our Dragon Chain chat. Vivek had a quick interview with I think it was Alex Stein or someone. But he said things that made the guy uncomfortable. It was so true. He's like, hey man, the government did this, the government did this, the government. I think it was like MK Ultra, blah blah. I mean, he was saying things that were hardcore. Like when Trump started talking about the deep state, that was Area 51. It was fake. It was a conspiracy theory. It's not real. And he's just like, oh yeah, I'm the president. There's deep state. They run it. This guy, and now all of a sudden it's accepted. It's accepted. There's when I heard people in the news media talking about the deep state in a real form. So to me, there's like Trump. He does so many things that are like outsider good, and then the first thing is right when he won. He said, "I called Hillary and I congratulated her and told her she's a great lady." And what did you just say? And then because it was like he's gonna put her in. Finally, they're gonna be exposed. Clinton Foundation, the body count, the body guards, all that, and then it's like, no, she's a good woman, and she ran a good campaign, and all right, I'm so glad and proud of running it. I was like, whoa. To me, it was just like red flags, but he hadn't done anything yet. He wasn't president. But he does do a lot of things that are very positive and very outside. But then, like you said, there's certain things he does that, are not. He'll can I used to worship the dude. I used to read. I read his book. I don't read books. As far as a financial advisor, the art of the deal, selling, negotiating, he is great. But he could have gotten Assange out. He could have gotten Ross out. Now that he knows, and when he was asked about crypto, he gave a Trump answer. I like the dollar, but blah blah blah. So, but now he knows crypto's huge, and how he's for it. So I think he's smart politically, and politically now everyone's talking about Ross.
He was,
So
anyway, okay, man, that was a long answer, Sean. Greg, quick. Who's
okay? God, honestly, I think probably it's gonna be Vivek, but at the same time, there's a part of me that wants it to be a certain thing. It's not gonna be this, but I'm gonna put a fantasy wish cast out there.
What is it?
I think he should, as soon as it's clear that he's going to trounce everybody, somehow convince Kennedy to join him.
Oh yeah, that was my thought way back in the day that Kennedy.
That'd be the dream team, in my opinion,
because he has to run independently. But I think that's a realistic potential and would be amazing. Although my issue with that is Kennedy is owned by that same lobby that Trump is, and that same lobby that Biden is now. So I don't
make sense why he wasn't at the non-debate though.
That was illegal too, right? There's no
but is it if they already know that he's going to be his candidate? That's really interesting.
No, it's not illegal because it wasn't a sanctioned debate. It was wholly owned by CNN. That gets back to the whole ownership thing.
Okay. So anyway, Anyway,
So who
I
do you
actually
think?
don't.
Who'd you
Joe.
pick? Who'd you
Yeah.
pick,
Joe.
Joe?
I don't have a freaking clue. I mean, listen to some people say. I will tell you, and a person I don't know, but it's going to be I think it's going to be a deep state person. It's going to be someone who is more owned than he is, right? I think he's converted into, he's now owned, but I think whatever he picks is going to be even worse. And we saw before. We saw his selection before. And there's something about a Project 2025 thing also, which I've not looked into, but he's disavowed it twice. They're trying to say, "Oh, this is him. He's trying to be radical." And he said, "That's not me. I don't know anything about that. That's bullshit." And he's basically twice said that it was ludicrous. And so all the people who are trying to, are hoping that he's going to be what he was supposed to be last time. He just needs another chance. He'll pardon us all. Oh wait, no, this time he'll build a wall. None of this shit's gonna happen. It's a show. It's just a freaking stupid ass circus that we're supposed to be watching and having fun watching, while they're just screwing us until they're completely done screwing us. So anyway,
15 seconds, everybody.
4 minutes. Yeah. So real quick, you have 15 seconds. I'm going to start with Sean. You have we're going to count it down here. You have 15 seconds. What's up this week?
Me and Greg are supposed to have a talk.
That'd be good.
So check that out. Check me out on OnlyFans, Crypto Nibbles.
Right on. Perfect. Okay.
Release on Tuesday. First half on her channel, second half on mine. Love your fellow man, blah, blah, blah.
Perfect. Okay, Greg.
All right. I'm going to take my 2 seconds here to point out some really interesting FOIA requests that just came back from Racket News. I was reading this morning. There are a bunch of emails back and forth between one of the university pro-censorship projects and Twitter. So it's sort of like an extension of the Twitter files, but taken by FOIA request from these universities. This one in particular was a Clemson-based project, and some of the information in there is really revealing with respect to how Twitter was going about at the time suppressing accounts. Because they make some candid disclosures about the methods and the mechanisms they were employing to spot what they called inauthentic accounts. If you're the bottom line is, if you're a late night and a midday and an early morning tweeter, or you're a short sleeper like me, then you're likely to get tagged because you're tweeting in different time zones.
That's interesting. Okay. William, what up?
I'll be very, 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 very quick. I was on Lisa's show this past Monday. It was great. I appreciate that. Had fun. Go to Den.Social to find more and learn more about Den.Social. And Le Pen in France, I don't know what happened there. And UK, disappointing on their elections. Lisa.
Don't forget the recent, I believe, jailing of Bolsonaro after his stolen election, and then their whole, I think theirs was a J8 day that the people revolted, and now he's being lawfared because of accepting a diamond from somebody or something, and the issues are illegal financing, and that's the same thing they're going after Trump for, it same thing they're going after Le Pen for. Anyway, find me on Twitter at Lisa Mighty Davis, join my Telegram, find my links in my YouTube.
Thanks, guys. You guys know where to find me. We'll talk soon. Thanks. Bye.
We talk.